All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at this work order tab by tab, and we're going to talk about some of the capabilities and benefits you can get from using work orders within Mothernote. All right, so the first thing to note is that in the couple of examples we just demonstrated, this work order was created directly from a customer profile. Okay, it wasn't created off of an order, it wasn't created from a case or a purchase order. You can see that across the top here that these are empty, so there's nothing to reference. If I did add an order in here or a case, etc., then I'd be able to click on those records and take me right into the more detail that I would need to get from those actual parent records. If after the fact, if I like, I can go ahead and I can put an order reference in here, and I can basically tie this back to a specific order. Okay? Now we'll talk about some of this information in the second here, but what we want to talk about over here is going to be the billing and the service tab. This is basically taken from the customer profile. However, if it was created off an order, it would be taken off of the order profile. They could be the same, but if you change something in the order that was originally different in the customer profile, it would just take what was in the order. Okay? So a couple things to note here when it comes to services where the service is being conducted. You do have options when working with subcontractors or vendors that if you need to assign this to a particular vendor or subcontractor, you can go ahead and do that as well, okay, down below. Now the billing information, you definitely want to make sure is going to be correct, because especially in the case that you want to have invoices generated off of this particular work order. So if you're going to use this work order to actually bill the customer, you definitely want to make sure that this information is correct. This right now is taking all of the billing information off of the customer profile itself. Okay, so a couple things over here. This is kind of standard protocol for the rest of the transaction modules within Mothernote. You definitely want to have a reference of what your work order is, because if you have multiple trips, multiple work orders, that sort of thing, you want to be able to distinguish the two or the three that you may have within the customer's profile, as well as within the work order list. Down here, some standard things, who it's assigned to, revision dates and numbers, and so on. So again, we showed you how to create those assigned to users or groups that you can have in here. Deposit information would be displayed from the actual sales order itself. So if somebody had paid a down payment or something, that would be reflected over here. And then of course, if you needed to use this for anything where you could bill the balance of that or give that as a receipt to the customer, you definitely have the deposit information over here. The details over here basically are just who the sales rep is and so on and so forth. All of this information here would by default be taken from the customer profile, but again, if this information were different on the order and this work order was created by a sales order, then it would be basically taking this information from the actual sales order itself. You can see down here you can include custom fields if you'd like. So in this case, we have an example of we're going to be installing something where we have to have the customer's Wi-Fi info. So one of our reps was able to get that information from them up front. We've put that on file here, and then we're good to go. Again, you have the notes where you can collaborate internally on this, as you can with all other transactions within the program by tagging people, so on and so forth. Okay. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to click Save, and I'm going to move to the next tab. Okay, so what we're really going to do right now is talk about the work order entry and also talk about bill of materials at the same time. So the work order entry is basically going to look like all the other transactional tabs that allow me to add and remove items and sub-items and so on and so forth. So we have the traditional view, which is the line items, the descriptions, the item names, and then of course the financial breakdown off to the side. Quantities, discounts, markups, total costs, extended prices, and so on and so forth. Now of course, a couple of things. I'm not going to get into too much detail of what you can do here. I just want to give you an overview of what this specific tab includes. So here I have 4 items that are going to be tied to this particular work order. So I have 2 television sets were exactly the same, which is kind of important to this example. I have 2 TVs that are the same that are going to be installed in different parts of the house. And then I have 2 acoustic sub-amplifiers that are also the same that are going to go along with each one of those TVs. Okay, so one thing to note about that is that while I have these as my line items, traditionally they're built in orders, and when you create an order and then you make a work order to install those items off of this, it just takes over those items. And of course, when you're installing, when you're creating a work order off an order, you get to determine which of the line items should go on that specific order, which is really beneficial when you're dealing with multiple trips for different phases of a project. Okay, so one of the things that we have here also now is going to be the work order bill of materials. And the bill of materials now is a summary of those items. So you can see in that specific instance we had 4 items, but they were 2 of each. And now you can see here that this is a really easy way for us to help stage the activity that we have for maybe the day before, the night before, whatever. I have to get all my parts and pieces together for that trip, and this is a convenient way for us to sort of tell us how much of each product or each component we need to be including within that install itself. Now, a couple of things to note about this. You do have the ability here in the bill of materials to go ahead and add additional items that will not impact what's going to be in this list over here. Just one thing to note is that should you want to invoice anything to the customer that's going to be in this work order, you want to have it in the work order entry list so it can actually be included in the calculations. Bill of materials might include things like a ladder. It could be things that are not purchasable, but items that you actually need to complete the work, okay, that the customer shouldn't see. All right, a couple things to note about that. You can go ahead and edit these if you would like. Okay, so in this case here, if you want, you can just put whatever you want. So I'm just going to do this for the sake of, just going to do this for the sake of this example here. Okay, and then I click Save. All right. Now the reason why I'm showing you this is because when you go back to closing this and then you go back to the bill of materials, you can see here that the description has been updated. However, it was not updated in any of these line items here. Okay, so should I stray too far and want to correct this, I can always go ahead to reset, and it'll reset my bill of materials to be exactly what my work order entry screen is. Okay, so just remember, you can lose some work in there depending if you've added other items and so on and so forth. You can just reset it to be exactly what the work order entry screen is going to be. Okay. All right, terms and conditions. I'm not going to add one to the final, but I am going to show you how to add them. These are the terms and conditions that we have for work orders on file. Okay, so if we want here, we can just go ahead and we can add these specific ones, and then we can just say, okay, these 2 terms and conditions have been added. From an admin perspective, you know, you can go ahead and update your terms and conditions right over here, and basically that also gives you the possibility where you can upload your own PDFs. So if you already have terms and conditions and contracts already created in a PDF format, you can have those PDFs actually included here as either in combination with ones that are from the system or by themselves. And ultimately when they when you go ahead and print the work order, those PDFs would append to this. Okay. All right, special instructions. Over here we have some special instructions we've put for the installation team to get inside the community. There's a gate code, and we put that gate code in here as well. Okay. You also know that you can put tasks along with this, as you can with all transactions. So you can create smart tasks or any tasks that go along with this. So you know, that's basically another section of tutorials. You can look at the tasks for that, but basically each transaction can have its own tasks. Then here's the work order schedule. And this is basically trip number 1. We always start with trip number 1. We have that here, and it respects the start times and the end times. Of course, in this case, I've put in dates and so on of things that I want to for my trip, etc. And then what I'm going to do here is I'm going to add a new trip. Okay, so in this case here, I want to add another trip, and basically this trip is going to be for the 23rd, and I'll start between 10 and 7. We'll do that, and I'll say, you know, set up programming. Okay, we'll just do that separate, and I'll just click Save, and then I'm good to go. And I'm going to have 2 trips with this. Okay. All right. When I've completed the work order, I can go over here to Work Order Complete, and I can start completing some of the items for the install. If not, I can complete all of them. I won't do that for this example here, but if I do the set all items to complete, it'll complete the quantities, and I can say Record Complete, and this job will be done 100%. Okay. I can also do that, just so you know, directly as a convenience factor over here from the Work Order Completed tab. If I click this, it'll complete everything, stamp the completion date here. I don't even have to go over here. I usually use this Work Order Completed tab if I'm partially completing some of the work on this particular work order. Okay, so I can sit and say this was done, this was done, this was done, and then leave the balance for the second trip, that sort of thing. All right. So the files over here, basically if I have any files that I've uploaded, so this could be schematics of the house, that could be wiring diagrams, whatever that may be that I have here that go along with this particular work order. I'm obviously talking in this case more electronics, but this could be anything. This could be you know, yard locations for sprinkler heads, anything like that. Could be contracts, maps of some sort, whatever you can think of that you have as a digital file that you want to attach to this, you can go ahead and do that. And then finally, the sent files, we're going to come back and take a look at this, but this is going to register all of the activity that's taking place with respect to dispatching work orders to my techs, is also sending work orders to my customers for them to sign, or maybe copies of their work orders for them to have on file, that sort of thing, okay? So that concludes this part here, reviewing all of these particular items for the work order itself.